a gleaming corporate tower in downtown Manhattan, where Richard Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Industries, sits in his corner office, accustomed to being the most powerful person in every room he enters. For 30 years, he's built an empire worth billions, commanding respect through intimidation and wielding his wealth like a weapon. His employees fear him, his competitors avoid him, and politicians bend to his will. But today, Richard Caldwell is about to learn that there's one place where money doesn't talk and titles don't matter: the courtroom of the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams. Before we dive into this incredible story, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the federal courthouse as Richard Caldwell adjusted his $2,000 Italian tie and straightened his custom-tailored suit. He was there for what he considered a minor inconvenience: a civil lawsuit filed by former employees alleging workplace discrimination. In his mind, it was just another problem that money could solve, another obstacle his team of high-priced lawyers would sweep away like dust. As he strutted through the courthouse corridors, flanked by his legal team, Caldwell's phone buzzed constantly with messages from his board of directors, stock analysts, and the media. The lawsuit had already cost his company millions in stock value, but he remained defiant. "This is just a shakedown," he muttered to his lead attorney, Marcus Sterling. "These people think they can intimidate me, but they don't know who they're dealing with." The courtroom was packed with reporters, former employees, and curious onlookers. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Caldwell took his seat at the defendant's table, his jaw set in a permanent scowl of annoyance. He checked his Rolex impatiently, treating the proceedings like just another business meeting he wanted to finish quickly. When the bailiff called for everyone to rise as Judge Patricia Williams entered the courtroom, something extraordinary happened. The entire room stood up in unison: lawyers, plaintiffs, defendants, spectators, even the court reporter. Everyone except one person. Richard Caldwell remained seated, his arms crossed defiantly, staring straight ahead as if the judge's entrance was beneath his notice. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. You could hear a pin drop as every eye turned to the defiant CEO. Judge Williams, a distinguished African-American woman in her mid-50s with 25 years of judicial experience, paused at her bench. She had seen many things in her courtroom: emotional outbursts, heated arguments, even threats, but this level of blatant disrespect was unprecedented. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Williams said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority that seemed to make the very air in the room heavier, "I believe you failed to stand when I entered my courtroom." Caldwell finally looked up, his eyes meeting hers with unmistakable contempt. "I don't stand for anyone," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "I'm Richard Caldwell. I employ thousands of people. I've been to the White House. I don't think you understand who you're dealing with." The collective gasp from the gallery was audible. Even his own lawyers looked mortified, with Marcus Sterling frantically whispering in his ear, trying to get him to apologize and show proper respect. But Caldwell was beyond reason, intoxicated by his own sense of superiority. Judge Williams set down her gavel with a gentle tap that somehow seemed to echo through the entire courtroom. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice still measured but now carrying an edge of steel, "in this courtroom there is only one person who decides what happens, and that person is me. Your wealth, your connections, your corporate empire, none of that matters here. What matters is respect for the law and respect for this court." "You can't tell me what to do," Caldwell shot back, his face reddening with anger. "I've donated millions to political campaigns. I know governors and senators. You're just a public servant making, what, $150,000 a year. I make that in a day." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Even the most seasoned court reporters had never witnessed such a display of arrogance and contempt. Judge Williams remained perfectly composed, but there was something in her eyes that sent chills down the spines of everyone watching. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, standing up from her bench, "I find you in contempt of court. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Caldwell to a holding cell where he can contemplate the meaning of respect." The bailiff, a large man who had been working courts for over a decade, approached the defendant's table. Caldwell's lawyers were frantically trying to apologize on his behalf, but the damage was done. "You can't do this to me," Caldwell shouted as the bailiff reached for his arm. "I have rights. I have lawyers. I have money." "What you have," Judge Williams replied, her voice rising for the first time, "is a complete misunderstanding of how justice works. In this courtroom, we don't kneel to wealth or bow to power. We serve justice, and justice is blind to your bank account." But Judge Williams wasn't finished. She continued in a voice that commanded absolute attention. "Mr. Caldwell, since you seem to believe that your wealth makes you superior to the law, let me explain exactly what contempt of court means for someone like you. You are hereby sentenced to 24 hours in county jail. Your bail is set at $50,000, which I'm sure is pocket change to you, but money won't get you out until you serve your full sentence." The color drained from Caldwell's face. "You can't be serious," he stammered. "Furthermore," Judge Williams continued, "I am ordering a complete financial audit of your company's practices related to this case. Every email, every document, every communication will be scrutinized. And Mr. Caldwell, I am also placing a gag order on you and your company. No press statements, no social media posts, no attempts to influence public opinion until this case is resolved." As the bailiff placed handcuffs on Caldwell's wrists, the reality of his situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was a complete dismantling of his carefully constructed image of invincibility. The clicking of the handcuffs echoed through the silent courtroom like a death knell for his arrogance. "Wait," Caldwell pleaded, his voice now shaking. "Your Honor, please. I made a mistake. I can write a check to charity. I can donate to the court system. Name your price." Judge Williams looked at him with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. "Mr. Caldwell, you still don't understand. Justice cannot be bought. Respect cannot be purchased. You have shown this court, these victims, and the entire legal system nothing but contempt. The only currency that matters here is accountability, and you, sir, are about to pay in full." As the bailiff led him away, Caldwell's empire began to crumble in real time. His stock price plummeted as news of his arrest spread across financial networks. Board members frantically called emergency meetings. Major clients began canceling contracts. The man who thought he was untouchable was being destroyed by his own arrogance. But the most devastating blow came when Judge Williams made her final announcement to the packed courtroom. "Let the record show that Mr. Caldwell's behavior today demonstrates a pattern of disrespect and superiority that speaks directly to the character evidence in this case. His actions in my courtroom today will be admissible evidence of his attitude toward authority and his treatment of others." The gasps from his legal team were audible. In one moment of arrogance, Caldwell had potentially destroyed his own defense. His lawyers knew that his behavior could now be used against him in the very case he was trying to win. 24 hours later, in a cramped county jail cell with concrete walls, a metal toilet, and a thin mattress that smelled of disinfectant, Richard Caldwell experienced something he hadn't felt in decades: complete powerlessness. His cellmate was a man named Jerome, a construction worker who had been arrested for unpaid parking tickets he couldn't afford to pay. "So you're the big shot CEO everyone's talking about," Jerome said, not unkindly. "Man, you really messed up, didn't you?" For the first time in his adult life, Caldwell found himself in conversation with someone who had no interest in his money or power. Jerome shared stories of working multiple jobs to support his family, of struggling to make ends meet while men like Caldwell made millions. As the hours passed, Caldwell began to see a world he had never bothered to notice before. When his lawyers finally came to process his release, Caldwell emerged from jail a different man. The expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes carried a heaviness that hadn't been there before. Most importantly, his swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. When he was finally brought back to the courtroom, something had changed. The swagger was gone. The arrogance had been replaced by something else, not quite humility, but the beginning of understanding. He stood when Judge Williams entered, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt small. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Williams said, "do you have anything to say?" For a moment, he was silent. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I apologize, Your Honor. I was wrong." Judge Williams nodded slowly. "Mr. Caldwell, you've spent your entire career believing that money can solve any problem and that power can overcome any obstacle. But there are things in this world that can't be bought: respect, dignity, and justice among them. Today, I hope you've learned that lesson." She continued, "However, this case is about more than your personal behavior. It's about the employees who worked for you, who trusted you, and who deserved better. While you were sitting in that cell, I reviewed the evidence presented by the plaintiffs, and I want to be clear. This case will proceed based on the facts, not on personalities or dramatic gestures." What happened next surprised everyone. Over the following weeks, as the case continued, Caldwell began to change. He started listening to his employees' testimonies, really listening, for the first time. He heard stories of discrimination, of dreams deferred, of talented people passed over because of their race or gender. He began to understand that his company's culture of fear and intimidation had real consequences for real people. The transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't complete. But slowly, Caldwell began to see his employees as human beings rather than just cogs in his corporate machine. He started arriving at court earlier, leaving his phone in the car, and paying attention to the proceedings with genuine interest rather than impatience. Judge Williams watched this transformation with cautious optimism. She had seen many powerful people pass through her courtroom, but few had the courage to truly examine their own behavior and make meaningful changes. She began to see in Caldwell not just an arrogant CEO, but a man capable of growth and redemption. The case ultimately resulted in a settlement that was fair to all parties. Caldwell's company implemented new diversity and inclusion policies, established a fund for employee education and advancement, and created an independent committee to investigate discrimination claims. More importantly, Caldwell himself began to change how he led his company, treating employees with the respect and dignity they deserved. But perhaps the most significant change was in Caldwell himself. He started visiting schools in underserved communities, sharing his story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and privilege. He established scholarship funds for students from disadvantaged backgrounds and began mentoring young entrepreneurs from diverse communities. Judge Williams, who had initially seen Caldwell as just another arrogant executive, began to see him as a man who had the courage to confront his own failures and work to make amends. Their relationship evolved from one of conflict to one of mutual respect, built on a shared commitment to justice and human dignity. The story of Richard Caldwell and Judge Patricia Williams became a powerful reminder that true power doesn't come from wealth or position, but from the ability to treat others with respect and dignity. It showed that even the most privileged among us can learn and grow, and that justice, when properly administered, has the power to transform not just circumstances, but hearts and minds. In the end, Caldwell's moment of arrogance in Judge Williams' courtroom became the catalyst for one of the most remarkable personal transformations in corporate history. The man who once refused to stand for a judge became someone who stood up for justice, equality, and human dignity. And Judge Williams, through her unwavering commitment to the principles of justice and respect, showed that the law truly is the great equalizer in our society. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful we think we are, no matter how much money we have or how many connections we've made, we all answer to the same fundamental principles of respect, dignity, and justice. Judge Williams didn't just enforce the law that day. She reminded everyone in that courtroom that true power comes from treating others with the respect they deserve, regardless of their position in life. So what can we learn from this incredible story? First, that respect is not something that can be bought or demanded. It must be earned through our actions and our character. Second, that true leadership means lifting others up, not tearing them down. And finally, that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to become a better version of ourselves. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own relationships with power and respect, then I want you to do something. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment below telling me what you learned from Richard Caldwell's transformation. And don't forget to subscribe because we have more incredible stories like this one coming your way. Remember, in a world that often seems divided by wealth, power, and privilege, there are still places where justice prevails, where respect matters more than riches, and where the content of our character is more important than the size of our bank accounts. The courtroom of Judge Patricia Williams was one of those places, and her response to Richard Caldwell's arrogance will be remembered as a defining moment in the pursuit of justice and human dignity. Until next time, remember that true power lies not in what we can take from others, but in what we can give. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.